Hi, welcome to Iowa News and Views. My name is Gary Sanders. Tonight's topic is the higher education budget battle. And our guests are Andy Stoll, UI Student Body President, and Robin White, member of the Student Senate at Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids. Welcome to the show. I'm sure most of you have been following in the news the battle that's going on in Des Moines between the Democrats in the House and Senate and the governor and the regents and the Republicans who control both the House and Senate. And the requests by the regents and the governor, which have been pared down by the Republicans. And that's where we stand as we tape this show on April 3rd. Andy, why don't you start off, since most of the headlines are about the University of Iowa. What is going on? What was the regent's request, and what then happened?
It's really complicated, but I'll try to boil down the numbers, make it kind of simple to understand. And I'll give you the University of Iowa numbers, but you do have to realize it does affect the Iowa State community and the University of Northern Iowa as well. Looking at the University of Iowa, the Board of Regents requested somewhere in the realm of about $321 million for the overall, what they saw as an operating budget and salaries for the university. The governor made his recommendation from there, which was the next step, and his recommendation was about $320 million. What his deal was is he wanted for 1 year, his plan was to give each university a specific project that he had, a specific special project. The one at the university here in Iowa City was the College of Public Health. There were some other monies included that were promised from years before, some construction money. But for 1 year, he wanted to focus on funding the base budget and doing one new project. From there, it went on to the House, and the House numbers are looking at about $314 million overall. That's including the operating budget as well as the salaries. So the way it looks, it's about $6 to $7 million short of what the university requested originally.
Mm-hmm. And generally, what's been the history? Do you have any idea of, does the governor and the House usually pair back with the regent's request, or is this a pro forma thing where they fund it as to whatever the request is?
Usually in the past, it's the amount given has been along the same lines as the request from the Board of Regents. This is just such a drastic cut. What has been said by President Emeritus Coleman of the university is that she may be forced to request upwards of a 12 to 13% tuition increase. And if you look at the history of tuition increases, they average right in the realm of about 3.4. So as you can see, this is going to be a major increase if all of this plays out.
Mm-hmm. Now, I also read in the paper that a bunch of you folks went to Des Moines to do some lobbying. How did that go?
I think it was effective in the sense that we were down there. We had about 70 students from the University of Iowa, the University of Northern Iowa, and Iowa State. We knew we weren't going to go down there and change, and create any miracles overnight. But by having a presence there, we got through to a lot of our representatives down there. Magic things didn't happen in the House, and we didn't expect that. And it's kind of we knew it had to be a continuous effort. We'll be heading back down there actually this Wednesday. And between the other three Regents universities, we've been there probably a total of about a dozen times in the past month.
Did anybody in the House say why they voted for this cut?
It's kind of interesting. It's a good question. I think there's a lot of number games being kind of a shell game, if you want to say. The moving of the numbers, the kind of politics behind the whole issue. As you saw, the vote was kind of a partisan, right down party lines, voting Republican, Democrat on these. And they're playing a game, or what they've done is originally the way the bill is proposed is there's two separate bills. They have the general operating budget and the salary bill. And they've taken the two and they've combined them together into one overall bill, which separately there's a cut in the base budget, and salaries are only funded about 50%, but they've combined the two together, and overall it appears as though there's a raise. So there's these games being played, and it's really unfortunate from my perspective as a student.
Mm-hmm. before we get to Robin, and I'm not going to let you just sit there the whole time, Robin. I just want to do a little more on this, on what's going on, because the headlines again are about the regents' budgets. Uh, did you ever get an audience with Governor Vilsack or any of your people to find out why he made a little cut from the original request?
We haven't. I guess I haven't talked directly to Governor Vilsack regarding that request, and we were down there originally kind of educating on behalf of that cut, but in light of these new cuts, it does make that look small. I don't know if I can totally say but on these cuts, but I think the governor's idea to only fund part of the salary bill, I guess I could give really background information on this. Normally the legislature funds the percentage of salaries based on what, actually I'll make it easier. They fund, by contract, we have to raise our salaries at the university by 4%. It's contracted with the faculty in that sense. And over the past, the history of this is the state has funded this, I know for sure, over the past 2 to 3 years. This year, the governor's proposal was only to fund a 2% increase. So there's a 2% shortfall on that the university is going to have to make up. And the interesting thing that plays into that is that'll have to be made up this following year. The University of Iowa had a 3.2% increase that has been approved, which is designated for what's called quality improvements. That may be eaten up paying for salaries that come originally from the governor's cut. So there's another
Another shell game that's going on?
Well, I wouldn't call that a shell game, but I would say that that's another effect you have to see, that these cuts are going to eat up the tuition increase not only this year, but if we have to have a 13% increase, this is the following year. It's just going to hurt students all around.
Okay, before we find out how it's going to hurt them and all that, let's get to Robin from Kirkwood Community College. And Robin, what's happening with the community college budget, and how do you feel about what's happening with the regents?
Well, for the last 10 years, Kirkwood has asked for money, and they have been cut, 3 to 4 million a year, and that's resulted into $30 to $40 million. This is the first year that we've actually asked for 8.9 million, and the governor was willing to give us 8.4, and we ended up with 6 million on the request table now. So for us, that's wonderful, because for the first time, we're actually getting somewhere. The problem is that the $141 million that the baseline is right now is for 63,000 students for 15 colleges.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of our viewers might not understand this, that the community college system is separate from the regents, which are the University of Northern Iowa, Iowa State, and the University of Iowa. And as you mentioned, there's 63,000 students in the community college system in the state, and that's quite a significant number.
Right.
And I think it's often overlooked in the press. Well, what do you folks think is going to happen? Let's say that the university cut happens. Is that going to affect you folks at Kirkwood, either immediately or in the near future?
It's going to do both. What's going to happen is people aren't going to be able to afford the regional schools, and that's going to put more people at the community level. And we don't have the funds, let alone the room, for them to be at the community schools, and you're not going to get that higher education. I mean, we really have to work together as a team, the regionals and the community colleges, if we're going to get what's best for everyone involved. And for someone like me who's went in my 2 years, and now I plan on going on to a regional or a private school, I want to know that education's going to be there and that funding's going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the Republicans are trying to play off the community colleges against the regents' institutions?
Oh, I would believe so in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who is your representative in Des Moines? Have you spoken to your representative?
Yes, we went and lobbied here in January, and actually we lobbied with several different representatives and different senators. We also went out and visited Senator Grassley out in Washington, D.C., and said, these are the faces that you're seeing in Iowa that are in the education. We want you to know we're here, our ages, what we're about, and know that this money affects us.
Mm-hmm. When you lobbied your representatives and senators in Des Moines, how responsive were they to you folks?
They were fabulous to us. They listened to us. I mean, they made us feel like they cared about what we had to say. Of course, the thing we always get is, you guys are always asking for money, you're asking for money. And what we try to let them know is it's not that we're begging for money or we think they always need to hand it over to us, but we want them to know we don't want the money to stop because that money is going for good things. And if you want to, have educated people in Iowa and you want us to stay in Iowa, you've got to help us get there so that we can move on in Iowa and have, this base of high educated people in Iowa. We need your support and we just don't want you to run away with it.
Would you say it's true that the average community college student is older, and no, I don't mean older like me, for example. I mean just above the undergraduate age.
The
People who are
non-traditional?
is that what they're calling now? People who are returning to school and perhaps have been out in the workforce and have a clearer picture of what they want to do with their
Actually,
with their
no.
life.
What you're going to find is a greater percentage is right out of high school. They're not ready to go on to that regional college level yet. And so this gives them a baseline to start out on so that they know when they go into the regional schools that they're ready. They know how to study. They know what they're doing. The other thing that you're going to see is you're going to see the older generation coming back and realizing your high school education no longer is enough for you. We also have special programs where, like, I'm in the sign language interpreting program, which is very new at Kirkwood, and that's offering something new to this area to say that we can provide these specialized interpreters to go out and help the people that are deaf. And so what you're doing is you're having the community colleges working with the industrials to give these people the special training so that they don't have to go to a four-year regional, but they can go in for 2 years, get their training, and then go back into the workforce. So it really depends.
Andy, let's get back to you. When you were in Des Moines lobbying, did anybody say to you, well, we're giving plenty of money to the community colleges, so it's their turn now, and you guys are going to have to wait a while?
I think that's that's a point that I really think is being played up in the media by a lot of our representatives, and it's unfortunate. You've got the argument, you've got people saying, oh, well, the state legislature is supplementing about $8,000 for in-state students to go to the Regents universities.
Now, what does that mean? What does that mean for our viewers? How is the legislature supplementing tuition money?
If you're I don't want to say supplementing, but it costs about $11,000 for a student to attend the University of Iowa,
Any student?
regardless where they're from.
Okay.
If you're from within the state of Iowa, you only have to pay about $3,000 of tuition, approximately that. But if
Okay.
you're from out of state, you have to pay the full $11,000. So basically, the tax dollars that your family has been paying while you lived in Iowa are going towards this education.
So what's really happening, if I interpret this right, is right now our taxes are paying for this $8,000
Right.
for an in-state person, since it costs $11,000.
Right, and the thing that's happening is you're going to hear people say, state legislature is giving $8,000 for a student to attend the Regents University, and they're giving about $2,000 to $3,000 for a student to attend, say, K through 12, or I'm not exactly sure of the numbers on the community colleges, but that's not the argument. The argument shouldn't take K through 12 and pit it against, the Regents universities. Right? Rob and I are here together.
Right.
We're not here to fight over money.
Right.
Iowa values it. The state of Iowa values a very affordable, high-quality education. The three Regents institutions, our community colleges, are some of the top as a whole in the nation. And by cutting money here or there or pitting different groups against each other, it's detracting from the overall quality.
So I noticed in the paper that Mary Sue Coleman says that she's quoted as saying, what I worry about is whether the state will back away from being a partner in helping students pay for tuition. And she's talking about a 12% increase in tuition, which would be substantial. I mean, have there been any estimates about how many kids would have to drop out of school, for example?
I haven't heard any of those, but the way, if you think about it this way, if an in-state student would have to pay approximately $500 more to attend school, college student average income for those viewers who are not in college ranges usually from $200 to $500 at the most. So that's an entire month's income, and I would say that's your what's kind of your average college student who's coming from college or coming from high school going straight into college. But if you look at your non-traditional college students, especially those that are putting themselves through college, that they don't have the parent support or they don't have the scholarships, that's something that's going to hurt all around, and that's going to probably send them elsewhere in education.
By the way, you're watching Iowa News and Views, and tonight we're talking about the higher education budget battle. And my guests are Andy Stoll, president of the student body at the University of Iowa, recently elected, and Robin White, student senator from Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids. By the way, our website and email address are going to be flashed on the screen, and we would love to hear you. And possibly we could read your letter on the air at a future show if you so choose. We'd love to hear your opinion on this issue. All right, anyway, so obviously there's going to be people who cannot afford to attend either the University of Iowa or one of the other regents and the fallback to the community college. How does that jibe, do you think, with what the governor and the legislature and everybody else, the business community, is saying we need to keep young people in Iowa? How does that relate, Robin?
Well, I think what's going on here is that Governor Vilsack, who I think is really out to help the educational system, is having to deal what's been going on for the last 10 years, and he's trying to find the best possible way. We're going to have to look at how we've got all this wasted money and how we've been spending the money, and now we're trying to find a way to fill it back in. We're going to have to find new ways to find that money. You know, and I can't say that I have all the answers for him, but taking the money from the education is sure not a good place to go, because if they want people to stay in Iowa, if they want those educations, they're going to have to keep the money coming so that we be educated, so that we can compete with the other states and the other countries around the world.
Andy, where'd you say you were from?
I'm actually from Omaha, Nebraska originally,
Okay.
and one of the reasons, I'm found here now in Iowa City, I guess, is because Iowa had, for an out-of-state student, a very low-cost education in the big picture, and the quality of education from the University of Iowa is quite amazing in comparison. If you look at that as an issue, Governor Vilsack and the legislature and everyone up there in Des Moines has been really pushing this 2010 project, saying we want to keep Iowans, younger, brighter Iowans within the state. If you look at it from the perspective of an out-of-state student, the state universities, the regions, and the three institutions really bring in, I don't want to say, I guess, kind of a reverse immigration sort of thing. They bring in some great students from out of state that come in and they get an education and they find great jobs within the state. If you look at it in the flip side, if your students are going to pay high prices to come here to the University of Iowa or one of the other region universities, they very well can pay the same amount to go out of state if these tuition increases that have been circulating around these 13% tuition increases. That would make the price of the University of Iowa about average within the Big Ten. We right now are the lowest in the Big Ten, and it's great to get
Is that in out-of-state and in-state?
both. And it's to get a Big Ten education, which is pretty well respected within the country. To get a quality education like that at the lowest price is quite a deal. But with what's going on here, and if all this plays out as I said, we might be looking at just kind of landing right at average.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. I don't know how much you guys are involved in the inner politics of what's going on in the state, but and how much of this is just the Republicans ganging up on Vilsack to try to make him look bad or put him in a bad situation, do you think? I'm just tossing this up. I don't know the answer.
I don't think it's so much that. I think what we're dealing with is we've got this money that has been spent for so many years, and now the Republicans are saying, well, we got to find this budget cut, and we're going to go after it, and if we have to, whatever we have to do to cut that, we're going to cut. I think, unfortunately, what's happening is it seems to be that the community colleges and like the schools of University of Iowa and the K through 12 are being pitted against each other to take it off the track of what the real problem is, and the problem is Iowa's been spending this money, and they got to find a way to fix it. But it's not through the education system that they're going to be able to do it.
Andy, do you think any of this is what I said, or possibly some kind of feelings that maybe out-of-state kids have been getting too good of a deal?
I don't know the inner workings of what's going up in Des Moines, and unfortunately, you've got these numbers games and these politics. I mean, it's an election year. There's things that are playing in all directions, and I don't think anybody really fully understands what's going on up there. But the bottom line is that what's going on is going to drop the quality of higher education, regardless of where it's at within the state of Iowa, and it's going to destroy these resources. And the university isn't just a resource for myself as a student or Robin as a student or these schools. because of what we have, because of the research, because of the library system, because of some of the special programs, example, the UNI teaching outreach programs, the Iowa State agricultural research, the hospitals over here at the university, all of that is a resource for the state of Iowa, and every citizen of Iowa benefits from that. And these cuts, well, they just damage that.
Well, when either of you were in Des Moines or talking to your local reps, certainly here in Iowa City, and I'm familiar with our reps here and our state senators, they are all fighting for more money. What do the Republicans from the rest of the state say when you talk to them? I mean, what is their rationale? I mean, they have students from all over the state. There's people from northwest Iowa and southwest Iowa and all over the state that are going to community colleges and to the region's institutions. What can they possibly give as a reason? Robin, any thoughts?
What I usually hear is, how come you're here? When you're here, you always ask me for money.
Unlike everybody else. I mean, isn't that why everybody goes to Des Moines, folks?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to Des Moines and saying, hey, cut our budget.
Right.
It doesn't matter what program they're in, and I'm talking everything, whether it's agriculture, environment, across the board, right?
Right.
And we've got a lot of good programs in the state, and everybody wants more money.
But
So,
the other thing I have to say is, and this is the one thing that I really want to get across, when we went and visited, the one thing that I did get to say to them is thank you, because I am fully funded. I am one of your non-traditional students that are trying to raise kids. I wasn't married up until just very recently. And so I was trying to make it work a job, go to school, and this is what he's talking about, and I'm going on to a 4-year. This would have never been possible without that funding. And so I wanted to thank him and tell him, hey, we're out here, and we do appreciate you, and please keep it up.
and if
And when I
this
did that, all I got out of him was, thank you.
yeah, so if the increase goes up, somebody like you might not be able to go on to the next level.
That's right.
And-
Or even make it to the first level.
Yeah. Now, Andy, I only am going by what I read in the paper, but some of the remarks that I read in the paper from Republican legislatures to the students bordered on the rude, and I don't know if you guys engendered it or what happened. What do you think happened?
I'd agree with you. Actually, our local representatives here in Iowa City have just done a phenomenal job in representing the interests of the university and the city in higher education. And for that, I would like to thank them. But we've got some other people from other parts of the state where their voting blocks are not necessarily, their base is not are not families or citizens that are sending students to these institutes. And it's quite interesting because you'll talk to one state senator who will say, oh, there are no cuts, or state legislature. I guess I've dealt more with the House, so I would say the state legislators, who will tell us there are no cuts, that we've been misinformed, that the university is trying to play us as students to go up there and get their money. And we'll have other legislators who are agreeing with us. And that's going back to the games that they're playing. But the bottom line is that, again, I guess this is the point I'm trying to get across, is there are cuts. And I've seen the numbers. I've seen how it works out. The base budget and the salaries have been cut. And we've had, I think, mixed reactions from both sides of the House and the Senate.
Do you think, have you heard from any of your, I'm going to say constituents, since you're the student body president, folks that are from Republican areas? Have they tried to talk to their legislators? And again, I only know what I read in the papers, but it doesn't seem like these folks have been receptive. Should all the students at the University of Iowa and in the community college system around the state be calling their legislators and talking to their parents and making sure that the people in Des Moines understand how critical this is, and that they do have voters or voters-to-be who are concerned?
We've been working to make sure that we get students and their families and alumni out there communicating. We've sent about 2,000 postcards up to the State House in the past 2 weeks from students who are really concerned, and we've taken 30, 40 students up there, I think, this last week to talk with the state legislators. Some of them have been received well, and as you said, some of them have been received very rudely. Especially from some of the Republican side, excuse me. But the important thing is that they get out there and that citizens get out there and communicate with their legislators.
But it takes more than just showing a face. I mean, if you want your representatives to listen to you, you want them to pay attention to you, go work their campaigns.
Right.
Go stamp their envelopes.
Right.
I'll tell you what, you go sit there one time, when you make a phone call, they're going to listen because you help them get to where they want to go.
Right.
So it's more than just calling. You have to become a part of what their campaign is and what they're doing to get them in there to say, hey, I want to listen to these kids because these kids listen to me.
That's a very good point. If you want your legislators to listen to you, you've
Right.
got to help them with what they're doing. We're just about out of time. Do either one of you have any final thoughts about what you think is going to happen? What efforts either of you or your organizations are going to be making here before this session ends?
I think we're pretty optimistic. We're going to continue to head up to Des Moines there on Wednesday.
And that'll be April 5th.
That'll be April 5th, and we'll be
Right.
taking a busload of students up there. And we've been encouraged by a lot of the senators that have been telling us that we're not going to get everything we want, but hopefully, there's something is going to come back. But the most important thing is that students and their families and people of the communities get out and communicate to the legislators.
Do you think Vilsack's going to veto any budget bill that is not satisfactory? Have you heard anything about that?
I would hope. That's what he's saying in the media. And I talked with his wife last week, and she...
Former school teacher, former community college teacher.
Excellent supporter of the schools
Christy
and libraries.
Vilsack,
So.
yes. All right. Robin, what about you? Well, what do you think is your efforts going to be here in the concluding weeks of the session?
I think we've already went up and we've said what we have to say. But I think what maybe Iowa could do is call their community colleges and say, let's go up together. And let's work as a team and say, hey, we're coming to you as a group and saying, yes, we appreciate, Mr. Vilsack, what you've done for us, but we understand what it means for the universities, and we need this budget, and let's work for it.
Did you hear that, Andy? I think you just got an offer to cooperate here from Kirkwood Community College Student Senate.
That's great.
I hope you're going to run with that.
We've got plans to work together with the other Regents universities, and if we can get anybody else on board, including people that aren't associated with higher education right now, it'd be great to have them on board.
Great. Great. Well, I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic. Obviously, this is going to be a campaign issue, whatever way this flies. So I hope everybody out there, realizes that in the fall and pays attention to how your representatives and senators voted on this issue. If you care about higher education in this state, certainly we cannot have any cuts. I mean, that's obvious to anybody, not just in Iowa City, but to around the state who's involved in education. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight on Iowa News and Views. I think it's been a tremendous show. The topic has been the higher education budget battle, and I think we've had a couple of very impressive students here tonight. Andy Stoll from the University of Iowa, student body president.
Thank you.
Robin White, student body senator from Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you out there for watching.